Hi, Udemy. I'd like to begin with a short introduction of who am I and why should you listen to me. Okay, this is my lightsaber. This is every instructor's must-have tool. It's a simple PowerPoint or any presentation controller, but I use it a lot. So my experience is I started my career as a trainer. I started in the Army, I learned how to train, learned how to be an instructor, and then every step of my career was always around training. Everything I did was around training. Up until about 4 or 5 years ago, then I started to go into the startups world, where I founded my first startup. And ever since then, I realized that most of my experience from training when delivering information to people really contributed a lot to every step of the way in my startup pitches, whether it was pitching at conferences, pitching at startup contests, pitching to investors, pitching to angels, and even most important, pitching to customers, meeting with customers. Now, my experience, as I said, is with training, but training is like selling, because when I do training, when I used to do all the training sessions, I'm selling information. If the people in the audience do not understand or do not take something from the session that I'm delivering, then I see it as a failure, because I have to sell them information in the best way possible so that they want to hear more. They want to get to know me better. They want to get to know my startup better. They want to invest in me. So training is like selling. You are selling facts. The facts about your company and your startup is what you can do with it. I have dealt with various target audiences. Like I said before, Army personnel, universities, engineers, sales and marketing people, VCs, conferences, show, elevator pitches, customers, every type of target audience I had. Whether it was 2 people in the room, 15 people in the room, or 300 people in the lecture hall. The same ideas always, and the same principles always repeat themselves, and you can always, I found it that I can always utilize the basic pitching and presentation styles through any type of target audience there is out there. The idea is to adapt, and when you're adapting to the place that you're pitching, it will make it easier for you to implement the principles that I'm going to show you throughout the course. So what have I learned through all of these training sessions and everything that I've done, every information that I've ever delivered? First of all, storytelling is best. I cannot stress that enough, and you will see that I will stress that throughout the course many times. But storytelling is the best way possible to deliver information, especially for startups, because people like to see how you solve problems. And problems are everyday occurrences. By wrapping everything into a real-life scenario makes it easy for your audience to accept the information that you are delivering, relate to that, feel connected to the solution, feel connected to you, feel connected to the problem. And that's the best thing that you can achieve. And that also leads me to the next point that I've learned works every time, is lowest common denominator. If you have a room of 2 people, and if you have a room of 300 people, it doesn't matter. There is always the lowest common denominator. Depends on your startup and depends on your solution. Your storytelling abilities should go along with addressing to the lowest common denominator. For example, if my startup is about social advertisement and I'm a B2B startup, I can address the people in front of me, let's say it's customers or angels or VCs, I can show them other social advertisement solutions, and I can show them ROIs, and I can show them fancy marketing facts and where the market will be in 2, 3, 4 years from now. But that way, they don't connect to me, they don't connect to my problems. Because, for example, if we take the social advertisement, although we were a B2B startup, if the end users don't use us, don't use our platform, then nothing is worth it. So what I did was connect to the lowest common denominator that everyone in the room can share, is How do you feel when you are approached by a social advertisement? Whether it's a pop-up on the sidebar or whenever on the web or on mobile. By connecting to that lowest common denominator that most people share, it was easier for me to convey my idea by using stories. So I addressed the lowest common denominator, told a story, and then they were connected to me and I had their attention. And that's what everyone should aspire to get, the full, undivided attention when you pitch. Remember also one thing, people expect to be somewhat entertained. Now, I don't mean entertained with jumping around and doing tricks and juggling or whatever, but be funny. Not funny in a way that people will not take you seriously, but you're describing a situation that people find difficulties with. So if by being, not funny, but being entertaining, and by being able to relate to them, again, lowest common denominator, you make them feel, again, more connected, but you make them feel that you, the person who is pitching, the person who owns the startup, you truly understand the problem. You truly understand the pain and the difficulty. So they, even subconsciously, they know that you share the same problem that they have, but the difference between you and them is that you actually go ahead and done something about it. And that's why you're here, and that's why you're pitching it to them. So people expect to be somewhat entertained, but entertained doesn't have to be funny. It does, however, needs to be memorable. And I'm going to touch upon that, and I'm going to elaborate on that later in the course. So what you're missing when you're not aware of these facts that I've just begun to tell you? Well, first of all, the main thing that you use is you lose your objective. Now, remember that every pitch that you do has an objective. Defining that objective is up to you. Being aware of your audience is up to you. If you are aware of the simple facts that I'm going to show throughout this course and the simple technique that are very easy to implement, you will be more in control of your session. And by being in control allows you a better and safe way to reaching your objective. I'm going to talk about how to set realistic objectives and how to maintain them and how eventually to make sure that you got them. Dealing with questions. Dealing with questions is a whole session by itself. It's one of my favorite sessions in this course. As I said, I've delivered it many, many times in the past. And dealing with questions is always the hard point of my students. Because dealing with questions usually throw you off course, especially if it's a hard question. We're going to talk about types of questions. We're going to talk about how to spot them, how to identify a type of question, and most importantly, how to deal with that question. And there are other techniques that I'm going to show you how you can use questions to your own benefit. Even tough and annoying questions by smart-ass people in the audience, you can use it to your benefit. And I'm going to show you that in an entire session called Dealing with Questions. Managing attention span. Well, it's short. We all know it's short, and I'm going to talk about it soon, but it's short. The idea of keeping attention span is leading your audience towards your goal or towards your objective. Remember, the thing that you must accomplish at the end of a pitch is reaching your objective. Your objective can be high level, getting a follow-up meeting. And your objective can also be getting the money, getting the investment, getting the partnership, getting the sale, acquiring the customer. But managing the attention span, it's important. I'm going to show you very, very basic ideas and very, very basic techniques about how people are acting in a classroom. And I've seen so many different types of behaviors in audiences: sleeping, reading a paper, shouting, cursing, threatening, everything I've seen, and there is always a way to deal with attention span of people. And you will be surprised to find out that most basic techniques that you can use with a room of 2 people who are there just to listen to you is pretty much the same techniques as you would use in a huge conference room where people came not to see just you, but came to network, came to see other startups, whatever. So I'm going to elaborate on how you need to be more aware of your attention span of your audience. Okay, so before we dive in, remember one thing. There is no right and wrong when choosing a pitching style or when perfecting your pitching style. This course is a discussion. I welcome any question. I dare you to ask me question. I dare you to challenge me. I first of all dare you to challenge yourself. I've been teaching this course for about 10 years now, and again with various target audiences, with various opinions and various implementations of what they're going to do. If I taught that for business people, then they need to know how to manage meetings and how to stand up in front of their teams and in front of their employees. But when I teach it to entrepreneurs, naturally the attitude changes. So I've tried to condense everything that I can into one generic course, effective pitching skills. And I don't expect you to become a perfect pitcher. I don't think you even expect that from yourself. Your main idea is to be an entrepreneur and get your startup out there. But it does help in any part of your startup to know these basic things, become more aware of these basic things of how people interact when someone shares information, when someone pitches, when someone presenting. So remember, any question that you have, I'm going to provide all the communications detail through in the course page. Contact me, challenge me, ask me questions. That's technique. That's a technique. I'm going to talk about it in lecture number 7, dealing with questions. So let's get started.